Yeah, so my name is Jon Russell. I'm joined by Mike Gowland. We both are Power Platform configuration consultants at ANS, and we're going to do a bit of a demo of our solution that we call JustAskIt, which is to do with OpenAI and Model-Driven App. Mike, do you want to say hello?
Hi, yeah, I'm John's better half.
Yeah, John's better half. Okay, so we're gonna just jump straight into the demo because I think the power of this is really the demo. So we've got a pretty kind of standard model-driven app. We can create requests, we can create new prompts, we can get responses back from those prompts. We've got some configuration around rules and all this kind of and prompt rules, etc. And what we can do is the way that this came about was that a solution architect in our team, who I think is on the call, asked me at about like 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, could I come up with a domain-specific example for a water utility company so that I could run a Dataverse lab with them in a couple of weeks' time. And I do know a little bit about some domains, but not all of them. So I kind of started getting into the AI rabbit hole after watching Don Osaka's South Coast Summit keynote. And yeah, Mike, we kind of like bumped heads together, really, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we've built is a way to ask a large language model to help us basically as Power Platform consultants. So if I click on make a request, and I've got a water utility specific example that I can ask, which is basically saying, can you provide me with a Dataverse schema and concentrate on site inspections? We can then pass that through to our Dataverse entity relationship diagram prompt. We can give it a bit of temperature. I'm not going to go into that right now. And then we can submit the request. And then if Mike shares his screen, he'll be able to show you what's happening in the flow in the background.
Sure. So I'm not going to show you the live flow happening, but I will just talk through the flow that we have now, and I'll just go through what's actually happening. So John creates his request. That gets picked up by the flow as a added or modified field in a table. We then go and get the prompt that's associated that John associated previously. So that was the database, the Dataverse ERD v2 prompt. That prompt also has a model, so we also collect the model as well. We could probably do a little bit more clever things with fetch XML there, but is what it is. We then get the temperature that's set on the request, and in this case, if the temperature hasn't been specified, we force a temperature of 0.7, which gives us sort of like a kind of like just slightly towards a creative side of balanced. The temperature is a scale of 0 to 1, and it will determine how deterministic or how creative your large language model is going to be. So if you've used Bing Chat before, and I think I can just bring it up on the side there potentially, you can see you've got that slider there for more precise, more creative, and more balanced. That's exactly what you're setting when we talk about temperature. Moving on, we then have some rules. I'll get you out of the way, John, sorry. We then have some rules that are either mandatory rules that we apply to every single prompt and request, or there are prompt specific rules that we can write specifically for certain prompts. What we're doing in these actions here is we're actually collecting those together, and at the end we actually join them together. And now we do something a little bit clever here. If we have lots of rules for one of our prompts, that could take us over some tokenization limits on the large language model. So what we do is we actually use GPT 3.5 Turbo to summarize all of those rules into some more concise text. So that reduces the amount of text and likewise reduces the amount of tokens that we're going to consume by sending the rules over. So we get GPT 3.5 Turbo to do that first. I appreciate I'm sort of scrolling through the screen probably a little bit quickly, so apologies for that. We then start to look at actually making our request. And our request is going to be a combination of the context and the purpose. And these are defined at the prompt level. So that's the database ERD v2 prompt that John selected in the request, followed by our condensed rules that come back from GPT 3.5 Turbo. We're then ready to actually make our request to the large language model to fulfill the initial request that we set out to make. We get the model from the prompt. It's defined there. We give it our system message, and then to actually trigger this, we also pass a user message, and the user message just contains that request text that Jon filled in about the water utility company. We set the temperature, we set the max tokens as well at that point. It goes off and does that request. Now, what our solution does is when we generate the ERD schema, we also generate a Mermaid.js diagram. And Mermaid.js is like a markdown language to be able to create things like flow charts. It does ERD diagrams, it does quadrant charts, that sort of thing. What we do then is we now get another large language model to just extract the Mermaid.js diagram from that response that we get. So you can see here, we've got an example of what one looks like. This is where we give the large language model context, and we say, well, actually, you're going to get this, and we want you to just take this out. Okay. And then we trigger that with a user message, and then again send that to the large language model, and that will return just the markdown language, the markdown chart that's actually in the initial response. Once we get to that stage, we then just do some calculations to token costs. So we calculate input and output tokens, and then we go and create a new response row. And I think if I've been talking long enough, Jon, that should now be ready to view. Fingers crossed. Live demo of OpenAI. The gods bless us. It has indeed.
So here we have our response down here, which we can double click. As Mike said, it's telling us how much it's cost. So it's cost us 11p. Tells us how many tokens. There's my request. And there is the response text. So it's telling me the Dataverse schema. So a sites table, inspectors table, inspections table, issues table, site types, the relationships. Then it's provided us with the Mermaid.js markdown language, which we have then sent to the JavaScript on here, and that has provided us with an ERD. So the key thing with all of this is that no one knows everything, right? No one knows all domains. No one knows every specific part of a domain. But you could use this and say you're on a pre-sales call with a customer, with a client, and they're like, okay, so I'm a aircraft manufacturer. What can we build in Dataverse? And you could just ask them for a couple of questions, and this becomes your starting point for that conversation. Not only is it it's pretty confident that it's coming back with accurate information and the ERD is pretty accurate, but it is kind of building rapport with the client, showing what a model-driven app can do, as well as the ability to talk to OpenAI and get this response back. But there are other bits to this as well, which I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to hand back over to Mike for the last part.
So I've got another flow to show everyone. So if you looked at the initial flow I showed you, you'll notice that what we were doing was very deterministic. So we were doing that prompt, and then we were just checking for the Mermaid.js diagram. Now, with this solution, our kind of goal for this is to make this more data-driven and to make it more customizable. So we want the ability for people to take this solution, actually write their own prompts. And you'll also see what we did before is where we started to string large language models together and request and use different model types to do different functions. That actually makes it starts to become quite powerful. So what we're working on at the moment to enhance JustAskIt is to actually have data-driven prompts. So we have the concept of a parent prompt, and then we have child prompts below that. That prompt that Jon just ran is one of our child prompts that just does that ERD generation. So the way we do that, this is a complete proof of concept that I started working on a few days ago, but this is just a trial run just to show you what this actually does. We get our parent prompt. We have our child prompts linked to that parent prompt. And what we do is we then iterate through those child prompts. And we do this thing where we're conscious of things like token limitization, token limits on large language models. So we'll actually start off by condensing the current conversation. And if I show you run 2 there, we're actually condensing the conversation down to system and user into an array. Let's go back to the first one quickly. We will then get the specific model that's used in that prompt. We will define what the token limits are for that model. We'll check whether the payload we think is going to exceed that token limit. So we just do some very quick maths on that. There isn't a better way with Power Automate that I've seen to do that token count cost, unless we use an API, but I have to look closer at look more into that. We then do that same step again where we get the rules and we actually merge those rules together. And then after that, we actually do our chat completion. So we're going to send that request. We're going to get the response back, which in this case is that ERD diagram. It's actually just the ERD schema. And then what we do is we actually capture that and reuse it again and again. So we go to the next prompt. The next prompt already has the context of what we've already asked it. And then it will continue. So this second prompt is actually going to generate the mermaid.js diagram, which we can see here. And then we have a third prompt that will then extract that mermaid.js diagram. And finally, we have a fourth prompt that says, okay, with all of that in mind, now generate me some user stories. And we can see here we've got, we can't see it very clearly. I don't know if I could do the raw outputs and it might show you better. It does not. But we actually have a HTML table here that lists out the different personas, a user story, and a point score that goes against each one. So we've got customer, we've got airline staff. It just goes through, it just creates those examples. So by doing this prompt orchestration, you can actually add more skills and functionality into your initial prompt, and you can have it, rather than just do that ERD diagram, you can have it do much more. So in this case, we're also adding user stories to that. We could also do things like actually map out Power Automate flows that might be used for the solution. Could potentially even look at doing some wireframing with it as well. So there's quite a lot of possibilities that we can take on with this. So that's really where we're going with JustAskIt, and it's currently on GitHub in a sort of pre-release stage, and we're looking to have our first release sort of around the beginning of February, where we'll actually have this functionality built in. Just go back over to you, John.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks a lot, Mike. Yeah, so it's like, as Mike said at the start, it's been a pleasure working with Mike on this, because we kind of complement each other really well, and it's been really nice getting into the weeds with it. I think another area that I think potentially this could be used for is as part of our consultant toolkit. So you have a Teams call with the client. It's recorded. You've got the transcript. Pass the transcript through the large language model, and then spit out all of these different pieces, whether that's user stories or user journeys, etc. And really then you're kind of getting it from the source without any translation issue or assumptions made, etc., because it's coming direct from the client. I'll pop up our initial slide deck so you can see the QR codes for us and the GitHub link. And yeah, that's it from us. you.